practitioners or listeners who aren't as familiar, how many athletes, riders are we talking about in a team? And could you maybe just circle back to that gut training and what's, what's going on there for, again, people who aren't as familiar?
Yeah. So the tour squad is 8. That is right, isn't it, Nicki?
Yeah, 8 riders.
Yeah, so it'd be 8 riders. So they'd all have quite often you wouldn't necessarily get all 8 at the same races and camps in the build-up. It depends on how the race program is operating. So you'd have 2, 3, maybe 4 of them at the same camp or in the same race block, kind of in the build-up to the tour. That's how we operate. It could be different in different teams, but it's good for the climbers to work together. It's good for the engine room guys to work together in the build-up. So from that perspective, around the gut training thing, how we certainly operate is that you kind of in I guess general training, as much as there is of that in a cycling season, you kind of leave the guys to it, give them some recommendations around total amounts. So like if you want to work on a training shorter training ride, maybe it's 30 grams an hour for those sort of 3, maybe 4-hour rides. Maybe when you get up to the 4, 5, 6-hour rides, you kind of slide up the scale to maybe it's 40, maybe it's 50 grams an hour in sort of general training in terms of carbohydrate intake on bike, and how people achieve that's kind of down to them. Maybe it actually kind of works out because they'd stop and have lunch, or they'd have just buy a sports drink from a garage on the side of the road, or if they didn't want to have if they didn't want to be constantly using the sort of race specific products and stuff that that we have for the team. So, and then in that to accommodate that sort of gut training piece as we get into that more sort of crucial time period, particularly in that sort of heaviest 2 weeks of training prior to a taper. If that happens to be a race, then that's also great. Is just really ramp up or encourage the increased use of the race specific foods, race specific drinks, and increasing those quantities on bike, so that ideally you'd get a couple of sessions, like a full race replication. So 90 grams an hour plus carbohydrates for a good 4 or 5 hours, just to really get that whole process of repetition of eating, processing, digesting, and doing that under high stress, high load. But I don't know, Nicki, if you have any other thoughts on that.
No, I think you sort of covered everything pretty well there, Sam. Obviously, I'm there for camps and races leading up to it, so a lot of the times we try to really mimic what we'll do in the bigger races. So if we're at a camp, then we'll try to have the same foods and stuff like that would normally be at the race, just to sort of get into that whole routine with the different foods and keeping it similar throughout the period.
It's something that, sorry, Mark, I was just going to say, it's something that we certainly have pushed more to now, is trying where possible to have one of the team chefs at all the camps, the altitude camps that we do, for example. Exactly as Nicki said, just because you're sort of adding on another layer of consistency. The chefs have styles of food, and so they kind of the guys get used to that in a training specific setting as well as into a race specific setting.